DeAndre Hopkins has been traded to the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll tell you how much fantasy value he'll have for the rest of this season on this episode of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Madjuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Welcome back. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Madjuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Madjuk. And it's a Wednesday episode, so of course, that means Matt Williamson is here. Check him out on Twitter at WilliamsonNFL. Matt, we got some big trade news early this morning. My son woke up at like 6 o'clock this morning, so of course, as I'm rocking him in the chair, I'm pulling up Twitter. Boom! Big trade. DeAndre Hopkins to the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, this doesn't have like a long-term dynasty ramifications or anything like that. But I want to know for you, how much value does this add to DeAndre Hopkins and Patrick Mahomes for the rest of the season?
Definitely helps Mahomes. I mean, I think that's pretty clear. And he's been hurting a little bit for fantasy reasons. You know, they're a great success rate team. They always seem like if it's 3rd and 4, they get 5, but they don't get 20. You know, but they consistently move the chains. They control the action, but they're not producing explosives and things of that nature. I don't know how much he helps that. You know, Marcus, you and I were talking off the air. Like, I don't think either one of us sees him as a direct replacement for Rashee Rice. You know, I think he's an outside the numbers, non-separator, throw him jump balls, go get it. And I don't even know how much of that he has left in the tank, but it's something they don't have on the roster currently. He's not even the speed guy to replace Marquise Brown, or, you know, obviously they were looking for vertical guys in Worthy and Brown. He's not that, but he can get downfield. I don't even know. I'm curious of your guys' opinion. I mean, even like in redraft, are you starting him this week? Is he a top 36 guy right now? I'm not even sure.
Kate?
I think he could be a top 36 guy, and maybe just based on necessity, right? Like the Chiefs are just kind of bleeding out at this wide receiver position. Definitely not going to be a direct replacement for Rashee Rice. You mentioned it. I think they play 2 different positions entirely. So not going to be a direct replacement also. And the fact that can you guys guess how many yards after the catch DeAndre Hopkins has this season?
1.
It's not very many.
You were only 5 yards off there.
Really? Wow.
After the catch. That is definitely not a Rashee Rice replacement. He's also not been necessarily a great separator this year. Ranks 87th out of 101 qualifying wide receivers in terms of separation percentage per PFF. But here's the good news. He's a big-bodied wide receiver, big hands, great at the catch point. And those are all things that are going to be good for Patrick Mahomes. And, just based on them needing beating hearts there on the field, I think DeAndre Hopkins, maybe not going to be super involved, but like we saw this past week with, Amari Cooper, a limited playbook there, even when, Josh Allen audibled out of the play, which happened to turn into an Amari Cooper touchdown. He had no idea what play was being run, but they figured it out, and he figured out how to manipulate that coverage and get open for the score. So at least he's a pro's pro. Might not know the playbook, but I think they're going to have plenty of designed plays just for DeAndre Hopkins, probably out of the gate.
So just real quick, just so from an NFL Chiefs perspective, I've been saying for a couple of weeks that they're a playmaker short. I mean, even if that were Travis Etienne or James Conner or another tight end, just give me somebody on the offense that's a skill position player that can make plays. I don't even know if they fit well or whatever, but they definitely seemed a playmaker short. I think this obviously helps, but I'm not sure it answers it.
Yeah, I don't think this is the final solution or anything
Yeah,
for the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Chiefs, but as you were talking, Matt, I was trying to think, like, who would be the most comparable receiver that the Chiefs have had in the Patrick Mahomes era to DeAndre
Hmm.
Hopkins? Because I can't really think of one. This seems like a totally different type of player that Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes have really haven't had to play with. And I'm sure they're going to make it work because you're talking about two all-time greats. But I think it's hard to project because we really just haven't seen anything like this before.
As you were talking, I was thinking, how about Andy Reid in Philly? Did he have anybody like that even that comes to mind? And I can't come up with anybody.
Deshaun Jackson and Jeremy Maclin. I mean, it's a weird fit.
It is, but I do think Reid and Mahomes, although they have their types, are very adaptable.
And that's the saving grace here. Like,
Yeah.
they're going to figure this out, right? But to me, like, honestly, I think you mentioned at the top, this is probably the best for Mahomes. It just gives them another weapon. I think it also helps Xavier Worthy a little bit because now he's not going to be relied on to be, not that he was being relied on as a number one receiver, but this takes some pressure off of him. I think helps Travis Kelce a little bit, but I don't think we're suddenly moving any of these guys up a whole tier or anything like that. I just think this makes the Chiefs offense a little bit more respectable.
Hopkins goes up a tier, though, at least,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I mean, he was in such a miserable situation.
But we're not at the point where he's an every week starter. Maybe we'll get there. I have my doubts, but like, I think this is a bigger name than production at this point.
Does this help Ridley or Burks or? I don't want any part of the Titans passing game, you know?
So, I saw today, I think that Treylon Burks is going on the injured reserve list with a knee injury. I mean, Calvin Ridley was already getting a bunch of targets. Honestly, Matt, it's probably just a Tony Pollard thing. Like, I just think we're going to get more Tony Pollard work. And I don't think you want any part of the rest of the
right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if this is as big a needle mover as the headline suggests, you know?
No, I would agree. Kate, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I just think in general, this is a good football move. This is a net positive football move. Is DeAndre Hopkins at this stage totally washed? I don't think so. But
no,
again, even heading into this like kind of trade situation, dealt with some health issues this year. So like, can he stay fully healthy? Because that's the problem he's already trying to answer for the Chiefs. And that's a problem they've dealt with. Who knows? But I think probably the biggest winner of all in this mix is Patrick Mahomes, who, like we said, I don't really know what to expect because he is such a different wide receiver than we've seen Mahomes gravitate towards in his career. He's never really had that just like 50-50 guy playing the perimeter. Like, this could be a really interesting fit in terms of just his upside, getting him to push the ball down the field a little bit more, increase that average depth of target, maybe increase that overall upside there and unlock an area of the field that hasn't necessarily been unlocked to this point.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about another trade at wide receiver that might happen. We've already had a bunch of deals with Amari Cooper being traded. Now with DeAndre Hopkins move, Devontae Adams. Could Cooper Kupp be next? We'll discuss that next. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. One of the things I love the most about Game Time is that you're going to get a panoramic view of your seats before you buy. When I go to like football games, I like to sit in the end zone, but I don't like to sit where the goalpost blocks my vision at all. So I either like to be right in the middle of the goalpost or off to the side a little bit. You're going to know exactly what your seats look like before you buy. Plus, they have the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in award winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less than at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in most states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Prize Picks is also the only real money daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in place even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup alive. Sign up today and get $50 instantly after you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use promo code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We are doing another wide receiver episode, some trade talks. Matt, I want to talk about Cooper Kupp, who we got some rumors over the last couple of days that the Rams are open to trading with him. Diana Rossini reported this morning that the Chiefs and Rams had discussions on Cooper Kupp. Ultimately, that did not happen, but it seems like Kupp is going to get moved. What are your thoughts on maybe what he has left and where would be the perfect fit if he does get traded?
First off, now I think the Chiefs are probably out of it. I mean, I think that's
Yes.
safe to say,
Yes.
And the 2 teams that stand out to me are the Bucs. I mean, injuries have hit them really, really hard, obviously. And I think they're still looking at like they could win the South with some help. And certainly the Steelers. I mean, you have no idea how much I've talked about wide receiver trades to the Steelers in the last 6 months. I mean, it's like when I bring it up to my buddies, like, I think it's going to happen. Like, yeah, sure. It's just been such a tease. I do think they are still very much in that market and should be. And I think he'd fit in pretty well, just from a usage blocking. One of the reasons I wanted Russell Wilson in the lineup was they don't have a lot of veteran leadership on offense. They've been like the youngest offense in the league for a couple of years in a row, and putting another adult in the room might help. And I still think back to the original question, I still think he's playing at a pretty high level. I question his durability.
Yeah. Kate, what do you
He's
think?
taking a beating,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think questions about durability are fair. I think the most obvious excellent landing point for Cooper Kupp is going to be the Bucs. I mean, you mentioned all the reasons. They are firmly in contention. If they can figure out this receiver position, if they can just kind of crutch along here until Mike Evans is healthy, whenever that is, it does feel like they're kind of one piece away with the way that Baker Mayfield is playing. He's playing out of his mind. He looks so good. He, even when he has some of these boneheaded turnovers, he just looks like the gunslinger kind of gamer that we've seen him be. Maybe if, even if we haven't necessarily seen him play at this level since college, like, he looks fantastic. And what does Cooper Kupp excel in? He excels in these routes out of the slot and kind of generating that kind of separation. That's what they've lost here in Chris Godwin. I think it would just kind of be the most natural fit. Now, I do think.
Can I also mention, Kate, real quick? Liam Cohen, the offensive coordinator for Tampa Bay, was the wide receiver coach for the Rams when Cooper Kupp had that monster season. So there's already a connection there. Don't forget, Baker Mayfield played with Cooper Kupp for a little bit over when he was with the Rams as well. So I do think that fit makes a lot of sense. Like, we know the NFL is a connections league. I think that obviously there's a fit there.
And everyone raves about Kupp as a teammate and a worker and all those things too,
Yep.
I think that, like, day one, if Cooper Kupp is traded to the Buccaneers, you can just slot him in every week starter, no questions asked.
And probably their target leader.
Yes.
Yep.
I mean, I think it'd be productive there. Yeah.
My thoughts on this are, I think the best landing spot for Cooper Kupp's fantasy and dynasty value is with the Rams. Like, just stay with the team that you know really well. Maybe nobody's able to meet that asking price, right? But I just have some concerns, Matt, that is any other team going to know how to use Cooper Kupp better than what Sean McVay knows how to use him? Is there going to be a quarterback out there that's going to trust Cooper Kupp more than what Matthew Stafford does? So to me, I don't want him to get traded if I have him in a dynasty league. I really don't want to see him go to Pittsburgh because you're right. Like
Mhm.
he's what Pittsburgh needs. But in terms of fantasy value, like, Matt, how many targets is Russell Wilson really going to give Cooper Kupp a game? 6, 7? And you're talking about somebody who had 18 catches the first 2 weeks of the season.
Yeah.
I don't want to see him go to a low volume passing attack.
Oh, his dynasty and fantasy value would suffer greatly in Pittsburgh.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's just no way around that. I mean, you're probably aware, I'm not sure our listeners are, but Pickens' air yard share and target share is extremely high. You know,
Yep.
when he's out there, they're throwing him the ball, they're designing things for him. Doesn't matter if Sauce is on him or Surtain, they throw him the ball over and over. And I don't know that would even decrease if Kupp was on the other side of him.
No.
Plus, I mean, this isn't super fantasy relevant, but Kupp is such a unique player in terms of usage. Like, he's almost, I mean, he does fullback stuff. He blocks defensive ends. I mean, he's a big physical wham block guy and work out of the slot and just takes a beating and plays super hard. And you can see why everyone loves him as a teammate. But the beauty of him is he's a target hog. And Tampa might be fine. I mean, especially for the short term.
Right.
I would think he gets a lot of targets there, especially while Evans is sidelined. But Pittsburgh would be terrible for him.
Matt, the other thing that I have concerns about is we know how close Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp are. We know how much Sean McVay loves Cooper Kupp. And then I understand this year is not going the way that's planned. However, they're only half game back from the 49ers. They already beat the 49ers this year. They're 2 games back in the division. If they're trading away Cooper Kupp, like that, just sirens go off in my head. Like this means to me, like Sean McVay knows that Cooper Kupp just can't stay healthy or that he's lost his athleticism. I believe he's played in 21 games over the last 3 years. I just wonder if they feel like he's compromised to a point that he's just never going to get back to the player that we saw in 2021.
It's a great point. And, you know, I've been in buildings and team doctors will sit there in the meetings with the coaches and staff and be like, I'm keeping him together with duct tape, man. I mean, like, I'm just trying to get him to game day, you know, and the big thing, and I'd have to study this, is once he's back in the fold, is he practicing on Wednesdays? I mean, probably not. And that's usually a sign of, let's just get this guy to game day. And then what complicates things too is the Rams play tomorrow. So if I'm the Steelers, the Bucks, whatever, I assume I want him to play because I haven't seen him play in a while before I buy him. You know what I mean? Like, but I also don't want any more wear and tear on his body. And is that the 75% version of him, you know, for knocking off the rust, so to speak? Like, what am I watching tomorrow night, you know?
Use your Steelers example, right? Like if Pittsburgh trades for him, let's say it gets done on Friday, he's not playing on Monday. Pittsburgh's got a bye in week 9. Like you're not going to see Cooper Kupp on the field until week 10. So how valuable is that for us in fantasy where you have a receiver coming off an injury, not going to help you till week 10. He's got to figure out this offense. I have him in several dynasty leagues. I just want him to stay with Los Angeles. That's the best hope of him having any kind of redeemable fantasy value this year.
But you probably wouldn't be upset if he ended up in Tampa.
No, I wouldn't be upset, but I do think it would be a downgrade.
Okay, that's fair.
Kate, how do you feel?
And Kate, I see that terrible towel over your shoulder. That bye week does set up pretty well for adding a receiver in the near future.
I think, let's be honest, from like a real life perspective, I think Cooper Kupp would be just such a great fit. I feel like the blocking, you know, aspect of that especially just fits so well with what Arthur Smith wants to accomplish, like real life on the field. And I think out of all the wide receivers that have kind of been available, Cooper Kupp actually probably fits the build of like what the type of player that the Steelers kind of could use in their offense, but definitely going to be the worst landing spot for his overall fantasy value by far. I'm going to disagree with you though, Marcus, on the point that he would lose value with the Bucks, because I think out of the gate, the connection that we've seen Baker Mayfield have with Chris Godwin in the slot this year, I do think that we would see that from day one. Like I don't think there's any question there for me. And even long term, like Chris Godwin going to be a free agent next year. I said I think it was on Monday's show or yesterday's show. I think that they bring Chris Godwin back, but if Cooper Kupp comes over, he's still got a couple years left on this deal. You can kind of check that box, right? Like, you don't have to worry about that next season. You have to worry about the health component, of course, but you also have to worry about that component if you're deciding to bring back Chris Godwin. So, like, I think even long term, not the worst move.
So I love that the Steelers get mentioned in all these trade rumors, whether
Everyone.
it's Brandon Ayuk or Devontae Adams or
Anybody.
that.
Oh,
Only for
I've
them to
done
end up.
Darius Slayton, Mike
Yeah, I
Williams,
mean,
Christian Kirk. I mean,
it's just going to be
yeah.
so funny when they end up with Kendrick Bourne for a 6th-round pick. It's
Oh, yeah.
going to be great. All right, let's talk about some second-round wide receivers that maybe you should be buying before their value goes up. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. This is a really weird week in the NFL. It's week 8. Usually we have bye weeks. Not the case. We've got 16 games this weekend. We've got only one. We've got no London games. We got a full Sunday slate of action. Go make a parlay. Go make a couple bets. And once you place that first $5 wager, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets that you can use on anything from the money line, the point total, the spread, or you can go bet on the futures market like I like to bet on. Go bet on who you think is going to make the playoffs. Do you think a team like the Chargers, who are 3-3 right now, are going to go on a run and make a wild card spot in the AFC? All of those lines and odds are available right now on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, go check out the new Locked On NFL show. 2 shows every single day, one in the morning with Tyler Rowland, one in the afternoon with Tony Wiggins. Check it out wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. All right, Matt, let's talk about some second-round wide receivers, because one of the things that we see year in and year out is that these receivers that are drafted in the second round don't hold a ton of value during their rookie years. But as soon as we get to the following offseason, their value shoots up. So we had 3 receivers get drafted in the second round this year: Keon Coleman, Ladd McConkey, and A.D. Mitchell. Did I miss one?
Yeah, Jalen Polk with 37 overall. Yeah.
There's a reason I forgot about him. But yes, 4.
Yeah, he's swimming upstream at the moment. Yeah.
You really dropped that one, Marcus.
Oh, there you go. Good job, Kate. Yeah. Thank you. All right, so 4 receivers drafted in round 2. Of those 4, Matt, which one would you like to buy?
I love McConkey. I mean, I still have hope for Coleman, but I don't think the Amari Cooper trade really does him any immediate favors. Polk is clearly swimming upstream right now and in over his head. You and I, again, off the air, were just talking receivers and thought, is there any chance Pierce moves from Indianapolis? And Mitchell wouldn't be super expensive at the moment. So I'm certainly interested at cost on Mitchell. But I think McConkey's ready to blow up with a huge second half of the season. Herbert, to me, looks really, really good. Teams are starting to just sell out against the run, and there's not much else to compete with the Chargers. I think McConkey is going to be a really big-time asset, to be honest with you.
Kate.
I'm with you. I'm all in on Ladd McConkey, and it's kind of easy to forget how good a prospect he was coming out. And the fact that he fell to the second round, I thought was kind of astounding. The fact that the Chargers didn't necessarily have to sell out to get a Malik Neighbors. They could build on the offensive line, which was a really smart move. But Ladd McConkey just is such a tough wide receiver, and a guy that can win with a lot of quickness, I just think he's the best wide receiver that was drafted in the second round, to be point blank. Like, I know that Keon Coleman is coming off a big week, has, Josh Allen at quarterback. Amari Cooper's going to be a free agent next year. So, like, the pathway is there, but I truly believe that Ladd McConkey has the best skill set, and he is so clearly this team's wide receiver 1 with one of the better quarterbacks in the National Football League, even if it's not necessarily translating to fantasy points.
You mean you're not afraid of Jalen Reagor and Will Dissly with the Chargers, Kate?
I was this week years old when I realized Jalen Reagor played for the LA Chargers. And the fact that I found out because he fumbled the ball on that was the first, I think, target of the game. That tells me everything I need to know. I'm good. I think Glad McConkey, just a very good wide receiver, one of my favorite prospects in this class. Love his ability as a route runner, his quickness, toughness. I think he fits the mentality of that team perfectly. And I mean, you've heard it literally from the moment he stepped into the building. Heaps of praise for Ladd McConkey, his preparedness, and I think he has the physical skill set to match.
Matt, I just want to ask you really quickly about Keon Coleman, because I agree with you. I think I'm picking Ladd there as well. But Coleman last week, 4 for 125. He had a touchdown in the game that was overturned. It was really, really close to being considered a catch. What are your long-term thoughts on Keon Coleman with the Bills?
My concern, and one of the reasons I really like the Amari Cooper trade for them, is I kind of felt Samuel, Shakir, Coleman, and Kincaid were all slots in the best world. You know, like, I'm not exactly sure where to put him. Like, I don't know that he's a true X beat man coverage on the perimeter type guy. I think he's more of the big Marquise Colston slot type of player, but he might be neither. And in a perfect world, he might be both, you know?
It seems like they want him to be Gabe Davis.
Yeah, that doesn't excite me. I mean, to me, Gabe Davis just runs wind sprints and does cardio and runs deep routes and doesn't do anything else. I hope he's more than that.
But do you remember that? Remember for like, an entire summer when when Gabe Davis was like a 4th round pick in Dynasty because he had 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. You can see the flashes, and this is what's so hard with Coleman is like he doesn't create any separation. He's not great after the catch, but man, he has these games like he did last week, 4 for 125 as a 20-year-old. I just don't know what to think.
Me neither. I'm really torn on him. I can see his career going either direction, and maybe after the Cooper trade, it's worth throwing an offer, and someone's disgruntled a little bit, but he also has had a big game, so now's not exactly the time either.
Kate, final thoughts on Keon Coleman before we head out?
I was just never a huge fan, to be honest. I know he is young. I was probably one of the lone wolves in the production or in the fantasy media space here that wasn't just totally in love with Keon Coleman. Can make splash plays. So I actually think the Gabe Davis comparison is kind of a perfect one, right? Like he can make the splash plays. He can make the catches that nobody else can, but sometimes fails to make the catches that everybody else can. So I think that analogy here is kind of perfect. And that's not something that I think I don't think he has the makings of kind of like this every down go-to guy that I think Ladd McConkey could definitely be in terms of volume.
To bring this full circle to the Bucs, would you rather have Jalen McMillan or Keon Coleman?
Coleman.
I think I still would too.
Pretty comfortably for me. I'm just not a big
fan. I was never in on McMillan, but the opportunity looks good immediately.
Yeah. Kate?
Yeah, I'll take Keon Coleman.
Okay. We're all in agreement on Keon Coleman. We don't know what to think. It's basically what we think. All right. That is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty Football your first listen of the day. Check us out on YouTube as well. Follow Matt on Twitter at Williamson NFL. You can follow Kate on X, Twitter, or whatever you want to call it, at Kate Modjuk. I'm at Marcus_Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.